Hi everyone, and welcome to the fifth installment of our CalSHRM Insights webcast. Not annual yet, but we're hoping. I'm your host, Erin Lunn, and the CalSHRM webcast is sponsored by the California State Council of SHRM. It's designed to provide you with the very latest in HR topics and pertinent information. Additionally, it provides you an opportunity to earn educational credits. The webcast will be recorded and available for viewing on CalSHRM Awards website. Throughout the webcast, we encourage you to tweet us your questions at #CalSHRM Insights, or you can text us at 916-900-2795. Our guest speaker will be answering questions at the end of each segment. With us today is Susan Sesko. She's an HR manager and past president of the Kern County SHRM. She'll be handling our question and answer session as in addition to giving you the chapter updates at the end of the session. Today we have a guest speaker that I think many of you will be familiar with, Mr. Mike Letizia. He's the founder and president of Letizia HR Solutions. He's been in the human resource business for over 31 years with a full scope of HR experience from the management level on down. He's a credentialed member of the Society for Human Resource Management since 2002, and he's been elected as the Pacific West Region representative to serve on their Membership Advisory Council, both last year and again this year, 2016. Additionally, he's the past state director for CalSHRM, and he also serves on his local chapter, of course, the San Joaquin chapter, as a past president and on the board of directors. We're really excited today to have Mike Letizia with us. Tell us a little bit about what you'll be talking about, Mike.
Thanks, Erin. I appreciate it. As many of our attendees know, the FLSA has been changed. There are going to be some significant changes under the Fair Labor Standards Act that will be implemented on December 1st, 2016. And for the first time in many years now, California employers are going to need to start paying attention to the federal rules, because we are now going to have this sort of convergence of both federal and state to look at, making it a little more complex than it already is. But in California, we're pretty much used to that anyway. So.
Yes, we are. So we've got a lot of ground to cover today. A little bit later, Debbie Haley of CalSHRM Awards will be joining us to bring us the CalSHRM Resources segment. I want to remind everyone to text or tweet their questions in, so let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. The final federal overtime rule, it was released recently, and it is now showing that we are going to have to look at both the federal threshold for salary. If you are not making $47,476 per year or $913 per week, you'll no longer be eligible to be exempt. And that is going to be now also in California. So this all goes into effect on December 1st, 2016. And what's important is we in California, who are operating under our 17 wage orders, are now going to have to integrate both this federal rule and our testing and our duties testing for our wage orders at the same time. Department of Labor is also going to increase the salary threshold every 3 years going forward. So this isn't something that's just going to be a one-time. This is now going to be something that we're going to have to deal with on an ongoing basis. And I do have a slide coming up that kind of shows where California's new minimum wage that is going up will take over, and then we'll see what the DOL does. And so it's going to be a back and forth thing.
Reconcile it all.
That is, unless, of course, the entire world changes, and who knows what will happen on January 1st.
You'll need a new slide 2007.
Yes, there'll be a whole new slide deck for that on 2017. The next slide, we talk about California specifically. So as you can see on the slide, what we've done is we've outlined the difference that California is going to have over the next 5 years, because Governor Brown signed earlier this year the bill increasing California's minimum wage. And so, oops, sorry, got a little too big. On January 1st of 2017, right now we're at $10 an hour.
Okay.
So we know for December 1st, we are actually going to be under the federal threshold. When it comes to January 1st, 2017, California's minimum wage is going to go up to $10.50 per hour, unless, of course, you're in one of the multiple municipalities that has their own minimum wage. But that would be under the federal threshold. Therefore, we're going to have to look to the federal threshold. January 1st, 2018, we go up to $11 an hour, or $8.80 a week, still going to be under the federal number. Okay. January of 2019 is when the first time when California's minimum wage is actually going to be higher than the $47,000 under the federal minimum wage. And January 1st of 2020, California goes to 13, but in 2020, the DOL is going to be indexing that minimum wage. So we'll be at 54,080, but they are predicting that the federal minimum wage could be 51,000 or higher, so it may be very close, actually. Wow. Okay. We may see the numbers very similar, so we'll be paying attention to that. And then 2021, California goes to 14, and then finally at 2022, we're at 15,000. So again, depending after 3 years how the DOL adjusts based on the 90th percentile, we could see the numbers close once again. So what's important for California employers to think about is that right now I may have employees who are exempt based on California's minimum wage. And if, in fact, those people are not adjusted by, especially if they're at the minimum, if they're not adjusted by December 1st, then that, in essence, will nullify their exemption, and they will then be entitled to earn overtime. So as an employer, I really need to look at my staffing, I need to look at my positions, need to look at my job descriptions and my salary ranges, where I break my exempt and non-exempt in my operation, because this is going to have a significant impact, especially if you're breaking your exemptions right at the minimum wage threshold. I mean, some employers go higher and it probably wouldn't be an issue for them, but other employers may not. On the next slide, we are looking at what is included in the final rule. And so from the perspective of the federal law, they have other terms and conditions that they added under the federal law, which we are not going to be eligible for in California. They allowed for up to 10% of the minimum salary to be through commission and non-discretionary bonuses, incentive pay, not an option in California. They also, in the next slide, allowed for the DOL allows for, I'll wait until it changes so that they can see it at the same time. There we go. DOL guaranteed a salary of $134,004 per year. That methodology using the 90th percentile of salaried workers nationwide, and again, we are not able to use that in the state of California. So there are some provisions under the new FLSA rule that we have to take into consideration, and then there are others that we cannot take into consideration. Really important that California employers understand that there are going to be employers outside of California, Nevada, our neighboring states, that are going to use that 10% rule, and they're going to include the incentives and the non-discretionary bonuses and commissions, not something that we are able to do here in California. So that will not be something that's inclusive.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Complicated.
It is interesting. It is very complicated, and what I think is most important from an employment perspective is that the date is rapidly approaching, and so if you have not taken the time to really look at your staffing model, look at your the way in which that you're staffing the organization, you want to make sure that you are taking a really strong look at that. Sadly, the other piece here is that promotion to an exempt position for a lot of people is it's like a badge of honor. Those people that are promoted to exempt are given much greater flexibility at work. They're not paid for the number of hours. They're paid for the value of the work that they bring into the organization. And so, someone who's a rank and file worker that gets promoted to supervisor or manager, a lot of times it isn't always about the exact dollars and cents. It's about the fact that now I have flexibility, and if I need to pick up my child or I need to have my car serviced, I can flex my schedule, I can work later, I can work earlier, I can do all these things. I don't have to worry about all of the overtime rules and the meal breaks and the meal penalties. And so, I don't believe, although understanding completely that minimum wage and that these things need to index as time goes by,
Sure.
there are going to be a lot of people in the workplace that are going to feel like this is a demotion.
Yeah.
When my flexibility is taken away, when I'm told you have to punch a time clock, that sometimes for a supervisor or manager can be a really devastating. Yeah, it can be really devastating. So making sure that you're crafting a really strong communication plan, that you're really making sure that these individuals understand that this is not a punishment.
It's not a company.
Right, it's not a punishment. And, in many cases, I think we'll see companies that will actually say, you know what, we'll go with the index. We'll make sure that our exemption level matches the federal threshold. But in many businesses across the state, that may be, it may not be an option. There are only so many dollars. And so, if I have 30 managers, I may not be able to raise all 30 managers if they're all in that same particular case. So I just think it's really important from a human resource perspective that we look seriously at how this is being communicated, the ways in which we are meeting with people and identifying the changes and helping them understand that this is something that is supposed to be to their benefit,
Right.
that we are going to go with that premise.
That was the goal.
That is the goal, and so until we can, sort of balance everything, we'll just move forward with that, because eventually California is going to surpass the federal level. It's just a matter, there's a few years now where we're going to be
In flux.
yes, in flux. And again, there are going to be many municipalities and cities in the state.
It doesn't even apply to them.
It does not even apply to them. They're already going to be past the federal threshold.
Yeah. So employers are really going to have to look past the black and white on their job descriptions and think about how this in fact affects people's personas.
Absolutely.
And that needs to start like right now.
It needs to start very, very shortly. I would not put it off. I would not put it off any further.
No, it's absolutely time. Well, that is very interesting. We are going to be taking a quick break right now. When we come back, we'll take some questions regarding this item. Welcome back to CalSHRM Insights. We're here with Mike Letizia and Susan Cisco. Before we left, we were speaking about FLSA and overtime, and I think we have a question. Susan?
Thank you, Erin. Before my question, though, I wanted to mention, you mentioned the municipalities having basically their own rules, and I was quite shocked that LA County had their own rule, come out. They're not only minimum wage is, it has increased, but sick time as well. Do you see that in a lot of municipalities in California right now? Or is it just, San Francisco, LA, like the larger?
Yeah, so far
areas?
it's been the larger cities. San Francisco definitely, LA just did although Santa Monica, as I understand, has put in their own sick time. So
Very interesting.
amazingly enough, it is becoming so complicated because if you're sending an employee to work in LA County, that employee is entitled to LA's pay
and
Wow.
sick
scale
time.
and sick time.
How would you even calculate that if they're working there for a
A
week?
lot of journal entries and adjustments.
Very
Truly.
interesting.
Yes, it is. It is becoming much, much more complicated to calculate all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because we go all over the state a lot of
Sure.
times. It's a very open state. So I send my employee to training, and California considers training to be regular work hours. That means they're entitled to that municipality's minimum wage while they're there at the training class.
Wow.
And do they accrue extra sick time now because they're in that training class as well? Are there any other benefits I have to be aware of
Right.
while that person is actually working within the city limits? Those are all questions that we have to ask ourselves, make sure we're in compliance, because honestly, very easy to go to the Department of Labor Standards Enforcement and download the claim form and say, I don't think I'm getting paid right. I don't think I got the best, I don't think I got the right wage. I don't think my sick time is right. I don't think my,
Yikes.
very, very easy to do for the employees. So employers really need to know
Be on
these
top of
things.
it.
Right, definitely. Yeah, one thing that I really found as a relief is I called LA County and they were very helpful. Gave me a link and
Very nice.
So, but it's just, employers have to stay aware.
Aware.
Yeah, definitely. So my question
Yes.
from that segment is, most HR practitioners have learned that Gen Yers, Gen Xers in our workforce, they place a high value on autonomy and flexibility. For a newly promoted Gen X or Yer, how do you think they're going to react to demoting from exempt to non-exempt? Do you think they're going to be jumping ship and trying to find higher paying jobs so that they, what do you see happening with that group?
That's a really good question, Susan. The key here, regardless of age necessarily, is going to be whether the individual feels that this is a punishment. If I'm young and I've just been promoted and now I have suddenly this flexibility and the ability now to work when I need to, which a lot of younger generational workers want that flexibility.
Sure.
And
Used to it.
flexible work schedules in California are tough. It is not that easy to be flexible in California. It can be quite cumbersome. So, having that flexibility taken away, and now telling this person, oh, by the way, you have to go back to punching a time card, you have to take your meal at exactly this time, make sure you take your 2 breaks. That, for many individuals and for many adults, seems really punitive.
Right.
I mean, an adult does not want to be told when to eat. An adult doesn't want to be told, you need to go and take your break. I'm in the middle of doing something. Can I finish what I'm doing? No, you have to go here and you have to do this and you have to do very... sometimes very limiting when it comes to wanting to empower the employee, wanting to drive engagement. So for young people, I think that is an aspect. I'm more concerned about the manager in a
been there.
nonprofit who's been there for 10 years, and nonprofit or charities don't pay a lot typically.
Right.
They're doing it because they love what they're giving back to their community. They like the contribution they make. And so these individuals being told now by their board, by the way, you have to punch a time card, and we can't afford to pay you overtime. So make
you
sure.
have to go home.
Yes, so you have to go home, and no, you can't take any calls when you're. This is an executive director of a local nonprofit. How do you tell someone who's worked at that place for 10 or 15 years, oh, by the way, now you can't do any work at home, and we can't afford to pay you overtime because we depend on funding from the state, or we're depending on donations. So, when SHRM got involved in this advocacy and was talking to the Department of Labor, that was one of the major things that we brought up, which is look at the entire system that you are impacting. There are going to be a lot of segments of the workforce out there that are going to have some significant impacts. And those folks, wouldn't you want to change? I'd be looking for something different.
Yeah,
because those kinds of constraints, how can I be successful as an executive director?
It squash creativity.
Yes,
And
it totally ties my hands so that I don't have the opportunity to do what I need to do.
Right.
great question.
Yeah.
So remember to tweet us your questions at CalSHRM Insights, or you can send us a text, 916-900-2795. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic.
Okay. California, we're going to talk about exemptions in California. So California has, I had mentioned earlier, 17 wage orders. There are 12 wage orders that actually cover different industries within the state, and then there are 5 wage orders that cover occupations. Within those wage orders, and they vary from industry to industry, there are specific exemptions and criteria and duties tests which we have to evaluate when it comes to our job descriptions to determine whether or not those particular positions would be eligible for exemption from overtime.
Okay.
The 6 typical exemptions that you find in the majority of wage orders are your administrative exemption, the executive exemption, professional exemption, computer software, commission sales, and then outside sales. What we need to do now is we need to go into those wage orders, and if you are not currently exempting your positions based on those wage orders, I encourage everyone out there in the audience to do so. Look at the wage order carefully. Make sure that you're going through those tests step by step. But starting with the administrative exemption, almost all of these exemptions require that the person perform work directly related to the management or the policies. They work independently, they make decisions, they have the capacity to carry a certain authority and have certain responsibility. The administrative function is not something that is tied to a job description's name. Just because you call someone an administrative assistant or an executive administrative assistant or an executive administrative this or that, it doesn't matter what the job title is. This is really tied to the functionality of the job. And so in many cases you have high-level senior executives, CEOs, CFOs, the C-suite, who have executive assistants who handle their administrative work, who want to exempt these folks, giving them the flexibility so that they can call them at 7:30 at night when they're at home. Right. And please don't forget to stop on your way in, and I need this and I need that. More like a personal assistant than just an administrative assistant. Mm-hmm. Well, yes, they want those people to be exempt because they want that flexibility. The same way the senior executive has flexibility, they want their employee to have flexibility. When truly you look at the exemption, and if this person is doing what would be considered production work for that senior executive, they're typing their memos, they're putting together their spreadsheets, they're taking care of routine, mundane things, dry cleaning and making appointments and handling calendars. These are not exempt functions. This person is not exercising regular discretion and independent judgment. They are directly following the need of the senior executive and taking care of that person's business to their satisfaction. And so just because someone has the word administrative in their job title does not give you administrative exemption. And this is probably the most, from the attorneys that I've dealt with, this is probably the most abused exemption that's out there. Because when you can't fit somebody into something, stick them into administrative and see if you can get, see if it works. They have to have some kind of special training in this particular role. They should have very specific skill, knowledge, expertise. The example I would give you is, I'm in a small business, maybe I only have 40 employees. They decide they need an HR person. So there's a single HR person that is handling all of the human resource. They're doing the policies, they're doing the procedures, they're doing the hiring, they're doing the firing, they're doing all of that. That is someone with special skills, special knowledge.
Making decisions on them.
Sorry about that, my battery's low. Seagull. They're working with those individuals who maybe in singular units. You may have IT people that are a department of one. When you think about departments of one, where that person makes the decisions for those departments, and then they just report up to a higher level senior person, but there's not someone checking their work on a daily basis.
Or telling them what to do,
We're going to shut this down now.
It's a very nice sequel.
It is, isn't it? That's where you want to look at your job description very carefully, look at the essential functions that are in that job description, make sure that those essential functions are such that they are showing a level of responsibility and authority, and that this person has to tap into knowledge and skills. Now, what we're going to need to do on top of this duties test is, earns a monthly salary equal to at least 2 times the state or municipality. Now we're going to have to look at the federal minimum wage. And so if it isn't the 47,000 plus, then that's where we're going to have to apply now the federal minimum wage to that. Go ahead.
And that is whatever benefits the employee the most.
Always.
Right?
Whatever is best for the employee is the rule that applies.
Okay.
It is never what benefits the employer. It is always what benefits the employee. So we always want to make sure that we are looking at both laws, we're looking at both regulations, and where the regulation has a better benefit under the federal law for the employee, we apply federal, and where it has a better benefit for the employee under state, we apply the state. Typically in California, state is going to apply a better benefit than federal. This is one of those rare circumstances where that's not, you could do an entire session on ADA, because when the Fed changed ADA, now California, we need to look at accommodation under federal law as well as under the Fair Employment and Housing Act. The executive exemption, again, very similar to the administrative exemption, except that this exemption is saying if I am a people manager and I manage at least 2 reports directly. 2 people report to me. It has to be 2 human beings. Doesn't specify whether they're full-time or part-time. State really doesn't care one way or the other. I have to have, in this particular role, the authority to hire and fire. I need to be the hiring manager or the hiring supervisor. I need to be able to make recommendations to promote these employees. I need to be able to give them raises if there's a metric, for increases at any particular time during the year. I have to have material influence and weight with the employer, that my decisions, my guidelines have weight within the organization in order to be exempt under executive. And again, I have to earn that same salary. So again, here in the executive exemption, you would find executive directors of nonprofits and charities who maybe have 5, 10 people reporting to them, who may not actually hit the 47. These people might be making 42,000, 45,000, but they won't be at necessarily that federal threshold. Or they could be based on a low salary plus a bonus situation, and we're not allowed to use that. So under the FLSA rule, it allowed the 10%, but California is not allowing that, so it has to be the actual wage. It cannot include any other outside income.
Wow, big impact.
So, and those are 2 primary ones. What is a concern also is I may be exempt under the executive exemption. I have 2 employees, and my company goes through a reduction, and now I only have 1 employee reporting to me. I had to let the second person go.
Too bad.
Guess what? Can't be under executive exemption. We may be able to look at administrative exemption, but in some cases, that manager, because now they don't have 2 employees reporting to them, will actually have to go back to punching a time clock and taking their meal breaks and doing their other breaks, and regardless of the work, because they no longer qualify under the exemption. It must be 2 employees that report directly to the person.
Wow. That kind of hit me kind of hard.
Well, and it happens a lot. I mean, a few years ago when we were going through that recession, a lot of employers were eliminating, a lot of ancillary kinds of jobs. The administrative assistants were going, and those. So suddenly I had managers that were supervising 3 people that were suddenly just supervising 1 person, and had to sit down with them and say, okay, if you thought it was tough before, now I have to give you the bad news. You got to go back on the time clock. Wow. Because the law is the law. It's not my choice. No. We have to comply. Next slide, I think we talk about the professional exemption. Here you can see there's influence in California. Professional exemption requires a license or a certification in the state of California. Working primarily law, medicine, dentistry, optometry, architecture, engineering, teaching, or accounting. There are some specific occupations that have been carved out of the professional exemption. Pharmacists are carved out. They have a very strong lobby here in California. Nurses are carved out unless you are a nurse manager and you are managing 2 or more other employees, where you would then be exempt under the managerial exemption. Nurses may not be exempt, even though they're professional, even though they're licensed, even though they have that body of knowledge, they cannot be exempted because they have a very strong lobby in California. You can be also working in a commonly recognized artistic profession. You'll find exemptions like this in the motion picture industry,
Oh, sure, yeah.
wage order, broadcasting, those kinds of industries throughout the state. Again, with all of these, you have to regularly exercise independent judgment. You have to be able to make decisions. You need to be able to have responsibility for affecting the operation of the business. If you are simply typing up stuff and handing it to somebody else and they're making the decision, that is not exemption under California law.
Wow.
And don't forget also, any of these people that are working in municipalities that have different minimum wages, you're either looking at the 47 from the Fed, or you're going in and doing the calculation of 2 times the minimum wage in the municipality to make sure that they are meeting the threshold for that municipality. So in cities like San Francisco, where I think it's $12.65 an hour now, you're looking at 25 and change per hour for those individuals to be considered exempt. And again, for a lot of nonprofits and charity, you're not going to find you're not going to find that. You're going to find a lot of people that are punching time clocks. There are some other exemptions in the state. We have a commission sales exemption. These only. I'm sorry. We'll do computer software first. Computer software. This was. It was amazing when this first came into play because a lot of computer engineers, a lot of programmers were all paid salary. But these individuals typically worked horrific hours all through the night because they were computer people, and computer people like working on computers.
Till it's done.
So, they went ahead and put in the threshold. I think we have the highest threshold in the country when it comes to computer software exemption. Every year, this is indexed also by the Labor Commissioner, and so effective January 1st of this year, the rate went to $41.85 per hour. So if you want to exempt someone who is engaged in systems analysis, systems design, any kind of document analysis, or they are creating documents within your system. They're testing systems that you're using. They are doing any kind of, it doesn't just necessarily have to be coding.
Right.
You can buy an existing piece of software, and if you have someone that's actually going in and customizing that, they're building, that also is included. So $41.85 per hour. Or $87,185 per year, and that will be indexed on or about October 1st. The Labor Commissioner will come out with what the CPI index is for 2017, and then those individuals, if you have them just at the threshold of $41.85, it will go up. I think it went up this year, 2.3 or 2.5%. So we may see another rise, and we're going to continue to see a rise in this every single year that goes by. So, again, we need to be monitoring in our IT departments. We need to be monitoring where our people are, really looking at the job descriptions carefully and how we are crafting these job descriptions, the way in which we're detailing the essential functions of the job, and if these components are a major part of those essential functions, these individuals should either be paid overtime or they should have at least that minimum paid if you've decided you're going to exempt them.
Wow.
And now the next one is sales. Commission sales exemption. This really only applies to wage orders 4 and 7. And wage order 4 is sort of like the professional technical, takes in a lot of different businesses in the state. 7 is retail specifically. And this commission sales exemption really focuses around retail sales. They have to be primarily engaged in sales in order to be exempt. Their earnings must exceed 1.5 times the California minimum wage in each week that they work.
Oh, wow.
So some of the folks I've talked to, and I'm not an attorney, but some of the folks I've talked to, I've said, okay, if earnings have to exceed 1.5 times the California minimum, then does that mean now we have to have 1.5 times the federal minimum? Because now the federal minimum is higher than the California minimum, and that's what we're doing. We're applying that. So it may now, they didn't have an answer, yes or no, but I don't want to be the case law for it, no matter what. You're not going to see my name in the newspaper. So
No, thank you.
yes, I would rather err on the side of the employee because nobody sues you because you pay them too much. They only sue you because they think they're getting ripped off or cheated. So 1.5 times California or the federal minimum wage now.
Okay.
And what's unfortunate about this is that it is wages earned in a week. California Labor Code talks about weekly earnings. So for a retailer to try and track weekly earnings with commission, when sometimes commissions aren't paid until the end of the month or they're in an entirely different plan, it becomes very complicated. So you don't see very many take advantage of this kind of exemption. What's also interesting is that they have to spend more than 50% of the earnings has to be commissions. So I not only have to make 1.5 times, but more than half of it has to be commissions. So in order for me to be exempt, the employer would need to know in those weekly earnings was at least
Which is which, yeah.
50% or more commission, and a lot of times
They
there's just not a way to figure that out. So.
Wow, complicated.
So it can be a challenge. Not that it's impossible, and I'm sure it happens some places, but you don't see it very often. And then finally, the last one is outside sales exemption. And in outside sales, these individuals, the state recognizes as those people that you hire that go out and pound the pavement and are drumming up new business for you. They have to be primarily engaged in sales. They have to spend more than 50% of their time away from your office.
Okay.
I think what employers forget is that a lot of times you hire these outside salespeople, but you have them come in for a week to do some kind of team building, or you have them come in for 3 days to do something, and as soon as you do that, you've negated their exemption status, and now they're entitled to overtime in the week that you have kept them in the office more than 50% of their work time. So it has to be tangible or intangible products, and again, really important that employers are monitoring these things, because it's so easy to say, hey, we're going to get all the sales, we're going to do a special thing for all of the outside salespeople.
Right.
Great, and we're going to send them to Lake Tahoe, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to get them all in the same room, and you're there from 8 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, and do not realize that they still think they're exempt. And once you do that, and they are not engaged in sales functions, you're now teaching them, they're in learning, they're in professional development, you're giving them skills. That totally takes them out of their exemption and makes them an hourly non-exempt employee. So,
My gosh.
a lot of things to consider. And now, and thinking about that 47, a lot of people have a very low base.
With the commission.
With commission. Some people have no base. It's a commission only. A lot of outside salespeople are commission only. So if I'm bringing them in for a week, guess what?
That could be very expensive.
Never mind the hotel. Yeah, never mind the hotel in Lake Tahoe.
Which is
I mean,
already
we're
pricey.
talking a couple of bucks here, and now
Right.
payroll taxes and matching and Social Security. Oh yeah. Be very careful about. Gee, wouldn't it be great to have a team building? You could be building a huge bill at the end of that you didn't realize because
Not to mention
they're
the
outside
travel
people.
time.
Yes, not to mention the
Travel time. If you
downtime.
don't have a travel policy,
Yeah.
you have to pay for
Sure.
the travel time as well.
Absolutely,
goodness.
absolutely.
It's a little hitch in the giddy up.
Yes, it sure is.
Thanks, Mike. That's given everyone a lot to think about, I know. Before we go to our next break, we're going over to CalSHRM Resources. This segment is brought to you by the CalSHRM Awards Store, and it features useful information to help save your company money and time. Let's go over to Debbie.
Hi. Well, I recently came across a Gallup poll that caught my attention. According to this poll, and I quote, "The number one reason most Americans leave their jobs is if they don't feel appreciated." In fact, 65% of people surveyed said they got no recognition for good work last year. End quote. Well, research does confirm that retention, productivity, workplace morale are all directly affected by being recognized for a job well done. I've been personally fortunate and have worked with some great supervisors that understood the power of recognition. I remember, and in some cases it was decades ago, how it felt to be appreciated and valued. And unfortunately, I can painfully remember that one who did the opposite. I didn't stay in that position for long. We know it takes time, energy to consistently and fairly reward and recognize employees. So we at CalSHRM Awards have good news. We offer an online longevity program that can save you the time and headache of a traditional award program. In addition to all the other features, it provides a dedicated customer service toll-free number so we can handle your concerns, your employees' concerns, and you don't have to worry. So feel free to contact Aaron or me for a quick evaluation of your 2017 Service Award Program and how we might be able to help you improve your process. Call us at 1-888-492-4186. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, Debbie. It's time for another quick break and a word from our sponsors, and then we'll come back and take some questions on exemptions. Hi, everyone. We're back with Mike Letizia, President of Letizia HR Solutions, and Susan Sesko, Kern County SHRM past president. Before we took our break, we were talking about California exemptions, and now we've got a couple of questions. Susan?
Thank you, Erin. With the added ACA costs, sick time, minimum wage increases, the increase in overtime pay for exempt going non-exempt, what are employers doing out there to recoup all of these extra costs that they've incurred?
Actually, I'm seeing several of the employers that I service looking very seriously at the organizational structure, making sure that they are actually putting together a structure that is the most efficient, that works well with the staffing that they have. Is there a way for them to either combine positions, or is there a way for them to redistribute work so that it's more effective? I think in a lot of cases there are employers that want to be able to give employees more money, but when there is just X amount of dollars to go around, you have to look seriously at how you're operating. Are there better efficiencies you can come up with? Are there ways to realign work, realign the workforce so that it works better? I think what is unfortunate is that, you know, at the very onset, we're going to see some loss in employment because dollars are dollars, and unless we can get in front of this, and unless we can establish the reorganization ahead of schedule and be prepared in advance, and a lot of times, you know, it's just not possible.
No.
We're going to end up seeing, I'm afraid we're going to end up seeing some people lose their jobs because of it, because employers have a bottom line. I mean, there's just X amount of dollars to go around. Where I think you may find some innovation in this, and I'm paying very close attention to it, is what they're going to do in Silicon Valley, and how are they going to address this in you know, very forward-thinking companies like Google and some of those companies. How are they redesigning and rethinking their operation in order to make this a success story and not a burden?
Right.
Those are the kinds of things I'm paying close attention to, because I think a lot of, I mean, dollars are dollars, but sometimes the innovative thinking and the ways in which you approach the types of workforces and workflows can be passed down even to small companies. You can put innovation into a small company. Truly, the person that says this is the way we've always done business since we opened in 1964, they're going to have a hard time. Yeah,
Right.
they're going to have a hard
It's
time.
going to be a problem for them.
It's going to be a problem
You have
because
to be very progressive
you do.
and forward-thinking.
yeah, the world
in this
has changed.
Time. Yeah.
World has changed, and we just do not have, you know, we don't have the ability to go back in time. We do have the ability to go forward, and so take what you've learned and switch it up and do your best and make it something positive for the future. But we're never going to go back to we're not going to go back to Darren Stevens' time.
There's no nose wiggling.
Yes, there's no nose wiggling. I always wanted to have a big office with a secretary and all of that. Yeah, we're not going back to those days.
No.
Yeah, not happening.
Did you have another question, or is that?
That's all we have for
Great.
the moment.
Okay.
We do have another segment coming up, so remember to tweet us your questions using the hashtag CalSHRM Insights or give us a text 916-900-2795. We're back to Mike, and now we're going to be covering California and the FLSA.
Right. So, sort of, in this segment, I think for all of those that are attending, what does this mean to your organization?
Right.
Truly, newly non-exempt is certainly going to, for those of you that have newly non-exempt employees, for them to embrace this overtime rule may be a challenge. As we talked about earlier, sitting down with these folks and helping them through the negative aspects they may feel, and I think being prepared that I may be sitting down with employees that find that this rule is a punishment. Right. How do I convert that thinking? Because if I want them to be engaged and I want them to be productive and I want them to be successful, I don't want them to go home every night saying, I got demoted, I'm being penalized, if you just paid me more, this would all go away. Mm-hmm. And money isn't always available to solve problems. Sometimes we have to be more creative than just throwing money at a problem. It's going to hit small businesses and I think nonprofits especially hard. Mm-hmm. And so in those particular cases where you may be in a small business or you may be running a nonprofit, you may be in higher education, you need to really look carefully at what your expectations are from these people who are currently exempt, especially if they are going to be transitioning to not be exempt on December 1st, and craft that conversion plan as soon as possible. Make sure that you're now providing information to those folks, that you're talking to them, that you are...
So it's not a surprise.
Yes, there shouldn't be any surprises. Everyone should know about this. Mm-hmm. This is not something that was developed by me as an employer. This is something that was imposed by the government. I am required to comply under the law, and therefore the employee is required to understand what that compliance means to them. And so doing that as far in advance as possible and preparing people for what's coming, I think is really important. It certainly could be, all of this could be subject to legal challenges. November 8th, is it? Is that the date? I'm sort of trying to block the November thing out of my mind. But when that date comes, there could be significant changes in the U.S. And honestly, although I believe it will happen the 1st of December, but it may only happen for a month. Who knows? Right. There could be an entirely different change in administration, in guidance. So, and quite frankly, that doesn't make HR's job any easier. No. You go through the entire process of getting it set up to have someone come back and say, oh no, we're repealing that and we're taking that away. Okay. Now I have to go back to what I was doing before. It's going to be costly to employers, no matter what.
Well, the communication plan, it has to be so intricate because you only have certain employees that it applies to. So you have to have a communication plan for those employees that are affected and also your workforce so they understand that these people are not being demoted.
Right.
They're still valuable,
right.
valuable contribibutors in the workplace.
Yeah. Why does my manager has to punch a time?
Oh yeah. Sitting in the break room next to my manager at we're
yes,
putting
and my manager has to go to lunch now, and my manager has to punch a time clock. Really?
What's up with that?
Yeah, it can have ramifications in interpersonal relations.
Sure.
Because now the employees are looking at the manager as
a
peer, not as a supervisor. Absolutely, there are employee relations ramifications that I don't think a lot of people have spent a lot of time delving into. It's been money,
right.
which is true, but there's a whole lot of employee human relation issues tied to this issue. People have felt empowered and that they were special, right. And you are taking that away from them by removing that specialness and saying now you are the same as they consider it. You are the same as your employee. We have removed your flexibility. You are now the same. It can absolutely change employee benefits. if you have your employee benefit plans tied to exemption, exempt managers get one plan and non-exempts get another plan.
Sure.
Now you have to look at your benefit plans, make sure that your benefit plans are written such that you're not actually going to have any problems with that. Because what you don't want to do is not only tell somebody, oh, by the way, you have to punch a time clock now, oh, and you're no longer eligible for the extra 10% that we
Benefit package,
contribute for managers who are
Oh, my
exempt, because
gosh.
now you've gone to non-exempt status.
Right.
So, and a lot of employers do that. I mean,
Sure.
they build certain perks
In.
into management positions because now that you're exempt, we're going to give an extra percentage and we're going to do this. There could be other perquisites, there could be other allowances, and if the policies are written that it is specifically tied to the status, you're going to want to look at those policies and make sure that you reword them so it's tied maybe to the position title or to the functionality rather than just the
General
exemption
yeah.
status.
Great advice.
Yeah, there are just so many things. They're all interrelated.
Yeah,
So
it's a
many of these
puzzle.
things are interrelated. There are maps out there. The DOL has maps on how FLSA is going to be affecting a lot of different states, and I encourage everyone, if you have not seen that, you really should go out there and look at it. It could absolutely reduce telecommuting options for a lot of folks, because if now I have to take my breaks and I have to take my meal period, and I'm losing the flexibility. And here in California, we're already so limited on the ways in which we can be flexible in the workplace in the private sector. That could be also something to take into consideration. Exempt level for highly paid employees is now going to be over the $100,000 threshold, and so therefore, with that higher threshold, we need to make sure that if we are exempting simply based on salary, that we are making sure that we match the salary test. You can find that a lot of employees may start moonlighting and finding other work because now they are not, or actually changing. I mean, I think we need to
Yeah.
look seriously at the fact that people start looking and saying, no, I'm going to look for a manager job that pays at least the minimum, because this is ridiculous. I don't want to lose my ability to be flexible. And many times when you canvass managers and supervisors, unless you're canvassing a sales department,
Right, that's different.
yes, where truly money is the motivating factor when it
Yeah.
comes to sales-driven roles. But outside of a sales organization, you find many times that flexibility, acknowledgement of
Work done.
achievements and your contribution, the relationship that you have with your manager and supervisor, and being in charge of yourself and the work that you do is a very important motivating factor
Yeah.
in management, and it could have a very serious effect on that. And then, millennials, honestly, they may actually end up getting the short end of the stick on all of this, because now you've got millennials in the workplace, and promotion for millennials is probably going to go down.
Sure.
Because now the threshold is up higher, and truly, if I have to pay a higher amount in order to exempt, I am going to want to have a higher level of experience. I'm going to want to have a higher level of maybe tenure in the organization,
absolutely.
service months that are in there. So we could find millennials that are sort of getting the short end of the stick on
Yeah,
all of
and
this
many of
as
them
well.
may have never worked in a job where they had to punch a time clock.
Right? It's entirely
true.
possible.
Yeah.
And it's not something very often they can do on their phone, and that's going to be devastating, because
Right?
if it isn't done with my electronic device in my pocket, what do you mean?
It
You have
cannot be done.
Yes. It doesn't happen on my cell phone? I mean, there should be an app for that, right? There's an app for the time
There's an
clock.
app for breaks and lunch. There should be.
So I think in this particular case, this is something that California has dealt with in the past. Typically, it's our own laws that we're dealing with, and the fact that we have to make changes. This now is just
Extra layer.
Yeah, it's an extra layer that we have to deal with. But the ramifications of employment whether it was California's rate that goes up, and honestly, in a couple of years, California's rate is going to be higher.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're talking about the 47,000 December 1st, yeah, okay. But in a few years, the threshold's going to be over $50,000. And for many employers in the state of California, that is just not an amount of money that they can spend on a manager. They're going to have non-exempt supervisors, and they're going to start rethinking, well, you know, then my supervisor can actually do some of the work that the employee does. And my supervisor is going to have to do the work and supervise at the same time, because I just don't have the bandwidth to pay these higher and higher amounts, unless, you know, because as California consumers, we are not willing to see our costs go up. So if they want to remain competitive, they can't just double their prices in order to cover the payroll costs that are going. So it's going to be a very interesting few years as all of this unravels, and as we continuously make these changes to see how it influences California business, and how it, especially from an HR perspective. There's probably been no more important time to have HR involved in your organization than now. Because just the way you communicate this, if it's done in an email or sent out on a letter that says this is what it is, you could absolutely be doing your company and your employees a huge disservice. And what you don't want to do is take a highly engaged, highly motivated individual who loves who loves being there because of the people and the company, and taint them because of a $3,000 or $4,000 difference per year.
Right.
Where you could be telling them, you know, I can't do anything on December 1st, and there's going to be 6 months, or there may be a year that we have to go, but then we're going to start catching up to the minimum wage, and things will get better. I mean, truly, it's about how am I going to communicate this in order for it to be positive.
And get through the next three to 4 years.
Get through the next 3 to 4 years until it sort of stabilizes and we see where we are. You know, once we get to 15, I don't believe it'll just stop.
No.
I believe fully that the legislature will come through and say, okay, now it's realistic. But at that particular time in the future, I need to worry about today. I can't worry about what's happening in 2022.
Right.
I think I'll be retired in 2022.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Definitely.
Yes.
Well, when companies talk about, you know, 5 and 10-year plans, you know, how can you really plan for all of this?
Right.
All at once.
All at once. And that's, you know, that's an excellent point. You go into your strategy meetings and you're trying to do a 3 to 5 year plan. You probably met last fall, and you've got a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan in place, and then Governor Brown signed the minimum wage bill this spring, and bingo, there goes your strategic plan.
Blow up your plan.
Yes, blow up the plan. Now you have to go back and redo it. And yeah, you don't want to go too far in the future, because
It would be a waste of time, actually.
Exactly.
yes,
Thanks, Mike.
you're welcome.
We are headed into our last commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be taking a few last questions, and we'll hear a brief summary from Mike about our subjects, and then Susan will be updating you on local chapter news. Hi everyone, welcome back to CalSHRM Insights. Our hour has whizzed by, so we're going over to Mike for a wrap-up and a summary.
Been great spending the hour with all of you. I hope I didn't make anyone panic. Do not panic. There's still time. There is time to get all of this stuff done. And CalSHRM and SHRM, great resources for you. As you see on the slide, there's a template for the memo to send out that SHRM's provided. I'm hoping that everyone that's registered and attending are SHRM members. If not, you should be, because they do a lot of the work for you, and it's worth every penny.
It's true.
A memo to exempt employees about the FLSA exchange, how to avoid salary compression when you're raising the minimum salary. You know, Susan, you had mentioned you had to do some upgrades in your LA area. So, you know, how do we avoid salary compression in those particular cases? What types of compensation an employer can include in an exempt salary in order to meet the salary requirement? So all of these things, plus the resources tab, are available to everyone. The DOL information is there as well, and I would encourage everyone that's listening, if you haven't taken some of the steps, absolutely start now. Do not wait until the 15th of November to get this done, because it's going to take a while, and as we've talked about, there are a lot of pieces in this puzzle, and you want to make sure you've covered every single one of those pieces.
Great, fantastic resources. It is now time for our CalSHRM update, and here's Susan with what's happening in your local chapters.
Thanks, Erin. Hi, and welcome to the CalSHRM chapter update, where we keep you updated on your local chapter, the latest news for your local chapters. First up, we have the Bay Area Human Resources Association Executives Council, who would like to invite you to their upcoming event, Under the Hood, Fire Up and Fine-Tune Your Employee Culture, with thought leader Stan Slapp. Join them on September 21st from 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. For more information, visit bahrec.shrm.org. Next, Central Coast Human Resources Association invites you to their annual HR Summit Conference, Inclusion, Together We're Better. Join them September 21st from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. For more information, visit www.ccchra.org. Inland Empire SHRM invites you to attend How to Drive Engagement with Energy Leadership on August 18th, which is tomorrow, starting at 11:30 a.m. Visit iv-hra.shrm.org for more information. If you need continuing education credits or just want to stay current on everything new in HR, there are numerous sessions available for every level CEU at the CalSHRM 20th Annual Symposium and Expo, October 12th, at the Bakersfield Marriott at the Convention Center. Visit shrmsymposium.com for more information. North State SHRM is pleased to host Workplace Violence Prevention in the Age of the Active Shooter, August 24th from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Please find more information at northstateshrm.org. The Professionals in Human Resources Association invites you to attend the California HR Conference from August 29th to the 31st in Long Beach, California. Visit pihra.com to learn more. Sacramento Area HR Association is pleased to host the 2016 SAHRA Annual Conference, September 20th and 21st. Please find more information at sbhra.org. San Diego SHRM invites you to the August Mixer, Taste of Mexico, with street tacos and a margarita bar, August 17th, which is today, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. For more information, visit sdshrm.org and take a drive to San Diego tonight. Southern California Wine Country SHRM invites you to the HR Pro Conference, taking place on October 7th. For more information, please visit scwcshrm.org or email info@scwcshrm.org. The San Joaquin HR Association, SJHRA, is pleased to present the event California Employment Law Express on September 14th, featuring speaker Mike Letizia. That would be you.
That would be me.
Go to sjhra.org for more information. If you have been a National SHRM member for some time or are a new member of National SHRM, we want to make sure that you get linked up to a local chapter. This is very important because you can get excellent HR education and it provides networking as well. So please check the CalSHRM homepage, click on About, and then California SHRM Chapters to find the information that you need. That's all I have for the CalSHRM update. Back to you, Erin.
Thanks, Susan. Well, that is it for our 5th installment of the CalSHRM Insights webcast. We want to thank you for joining us today. For those of you viewing for SHRM or HRCI credits, the certification numbers are 16ZA8P7 and the HRCI is 287996. Again, that's 16ZA8P7 and 287996. Detailed information on how to obtain your credits will be emailed to you directly after the webcast. I want to really thank today Susan for joining us with our updates and our featured speaker, Mike Letizia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Behind the scenes, we have a big thank you to our director, Charlie McKay of Saba Agency, and Tom Saba of CalSHRM Awards for producing today's webcast. Also to our home away from home here at TBC Media Studios. Make sure and tune in to the next CalSHRM Insights webcast. We'll be bringing you the latest in California HR info. Of course, we'll have a new guest speaker addressing HR topics most important to you. And Susan will be back to update us on local chapter news. We want to remind you again that today's webcast has been recorded and will be available for viewing on the CalSHRM Awards webcast. I'm your host, Erin Lunn, and this has been CalSHRM Insights. Thanks so much for joining us.